Welcome to Blizzard World. 60 seconds remaining. Welcome to Blizzard World.
The true enemy of humanity.
Dude, I'm a fucking master disaster at this
Ah!
shit. Dude, oh, it turned back on, dude. Oh, fuck.
Yes! Oh, I launched that shit into the
Dude,
straightest
oh my god,
fear.
you're really good.
I would not say I'm really good. God damn it!
Yes, yes.
I managed to turn on the same thing.
Yes.
Son of a bitch! I've
well, there
completely
it goes.
undone everything.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm so good at this.
You are not. No one's good at this.
And Oh no, I turned the middle one back on. Shit.
It's way.
Oh, I'm
damn
fucked,
it.
dude. I'm straight fucked.
No.
Left and up. Is that how it works? Oh, I fucked that shit way up.
Oh, look at me.
Oh my god!
Yeah, yeah.
How did you do that?
I just started launching them wildly.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, I'm really proud.
I don't think that's a good game if you can just randomly launch beanbags and start winning.
You know what? I'm starting to suspect that Minute to Win It may not be Wii's best work. Fucking...
like a Wii. It's a fucking little white box, and he's like, I'm trying to make a game.
I'm doing my best.
Using the box as a fan must roll eggs across the stage. Oh, this is like their most famous game.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of them.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Oh, the journey will be a difficult one.
We can do it.
Yeah, all right.
Let's go, gonna look up your button now.
How
Get
many
up,
fucking...
Get up.
God, yeah, this game is not worthy of that theme song.
I think this game is more than worthy of that theme song.
Okay, get ready. I'm gonna fucking fan the shit out of this egg. Oh no!
Okay.
What happened?
Oh god, I crushed one. I crushed
What am I
it.
doing?
I crushed it. I just really like this egg. Can we just play this game forever? Okay. I got it going. I got it going on, bro. I got it going on. Yo.
I too have it going on.
No, you don't.
I am the one.
Yeah. Yes.
Did it.
Yes. I got one in. I got one in.
Oh damn it!
Did you crush the egg?
No. Maybe.
Oh, go.
No.
Oh, fuck.
No, Aaron.
Hold on.
No. Oh, this shit is intense.
Yes.
I just like broke my wrist.
How the fuck? What the fuck? This egg isn't even on the fucking playing field, dude. This is bullshit. Fucking egg is off. You see that? How am I supposed to fucking? How am I supposed to? Oh, I had to knock it off, and then it came back. That was the grossest.
I'm fanning, bro.
Woo!
How is that
Barack
established?
Obama wins again.
How is that established? Bro?
Presidential election.
How many fucking
Minute to Win It.
How many eggs did you have on that shit?
2.
I also had 2.
Oh, well, I got them better.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? This is some affirmative action bullshit.
You had a minute.
Egg affirmative action.
You had 1 minute to win it, dude.
Come on, dude.
I like how his nose only points one direction.
Yeah, most people's noses do.
No, but like to the left.
Oh. Wait, with it.
What the?
We have to stack golf
Are you
balls.
fucking serious?
Yeah, I'm sure this should be easy.
That is bull to the shit, dog. That is redonkulous.
Okay.
This isn't fucking Epcot, dude.
Come the fuck on. Shut up, Guy Fieri.
You've got a minute to win it, and I've got a herniated disc.
Number 12 will make you throw your dog out the window.
What?
Oh,
Are you? What the?
wait, what?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Is it moving the... Do I push a
I
button?
think you have to like wiggle the thing.
Got it.
Oh, hold on.
Shit!
How did you?
I don't know.
Traveling.
Wait. Wait.
Damn it!
Fuck.
Wait, do they just randomly fucking... Oh...
From the corner, I thought your name in a conversation, playing hard to get. can't understand. When I look at you, I see the story in your eyes. When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. Night begins to shine. The night begins to shine. Night begins to shine. When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. Talk till dawn. My heart was racing. I took you home in the driving rain. Had my mind made up. I wanna feel your touch. When I look at you, I see the story in your eyes. When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. 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 When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. The night begins to shine. Have my mind made up. Wanna feel your touch. When I look at you, I see the story in your eyes. When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. 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 When we're dancing, the night begins to shine. Begins to shine. The night begins to shine. Begins to shine. Begins to shine. The night begins to shine. Begins to shine.
You want to get rid of me, that
Senjata is here. payload safely to its destination.
It seems we have a guest with an intriguing destiny. This place exists between dream and reality, mind and matter.
spree. Play of the game. Double, triple.
sunset will arrive, and no, there's no turning back now. So go on, go on, go on and meet me in the light now. Go on, go on, go on and see the light. So go on, go on, go on and meet me in the light now. Go on, go on, go on and see the light.
You used to call your own. Stolen, then turned against us all alone. Until correction, you will I believe. When all I hear is lies, they have to know I won't comply. How can we remain so blind? Falling faster till we fight and cease to resist one night, then our enemies will die. Oh, we are ready for the deception.
out there.
On point.
Guardian tech, awaiting deployment.
Cancelled.
Just keep us a target and we're on our way. Guardian tech, awaiting deployment.
Right here. Yeah, right here.
Our ally is under attack.
Let's run some field tests.
Our ally is under attack. Fire shot
Gunner
ready.
at your service.
Yeah, right here. Depth, right here.
Just say the word. Let's run some field tests.
A unit is under attack. Unit lost.
Guardian tech, awaiting deployment.
Our ally is under attack.
Let's run some field tests. I'm here if you need me. All right, here's my first pickup. Cryo systems ready to go. Let's run some field tests.
On hold.
Here's my first
Cancelled.
pickup.
Training. Cancelled. A unit is under
Let's run
attack.
some field tests.
I'm almost there, Commander. A little more time.
Dude, man, I think I even voted for this nut job.
Confirmed, HQ.
Let's run some field tests.
Our ally is under attack.
We got new orders. You can count on us.
Our ally is under attack.
I reckon this is it. Copy them new coordinates. Careful on the way down. Yes, sir.
A unit is under attack.
The president's getting close. We need to stop him.
Select target. Unit lost.
Hey there, Command.
Select target area. Enemy building captured. Bonus objective complete. A unit is under attack. The president is getting close to the fire base. Insufficient funds. Unit lost. A unit is under attack. The fire base has been destroyed. New objective received. A unit is under attack. Surveillance team ready.
We did it, Commander. It's a shame it had to happen this way, but we did what we had to do.
That was a close one. I can assure you, we did the right thing. Ackerman put the whole world in danger with that mad stunt. And all the while, we're at war with the Empire of the Rising Sun.
Sir, I just received word from an inside source that the Supreme Shogunate will be meeting in Tokyo tomorrow.
So the Empire's generals will all be in one place at one time?
Yes, sir. We can decapitate them with one stroke.
Brilliant. We must get on this immediately. I'll contact the Soviets. Let them know the good news. Commander, this might be it. Let's show the Empire of the Rising Sun that their divine destiny of world domination is nothing but an insane fantasy.
I'm glad to see you made it back in one piece, Commander. Excellent job at Mount Rushmore. I trust you're good to go?
You can flirt with the commander later, Lieutenant. Right now, we have a job to do.
I wasn't flirting, sir. I was just, making conversation. This is an exceptional opportunity. With the Empire's Prince Tatsu and all the Imperial Shogunate in the same location, we could take out their entire command structure. Tokyo Harbor, unfortunately, is also the home of their largest military force, so you'll once again be working in cooperation with the Soviets. General Krukrov's forces are en route, but you're going to have to hold the ground until they arrive.
The time has come for our joint attack against the Imperial military infrastructure in Tokyo Harbor. Soviet forces were waylaid on...
We only have one shot at this, and it's not going to be easy. But with the Soviets' help, we should be able to take out the Empire of the Rising Sun for good. The Soviets are en route, but you're going to have to hold the ground until they arrive.
What is your request?
Hey guys, what's up? Mad Season here, back with another video for you. I'm sure a lot of you are still working out on what class that you're wanting to play for Classic, and of course, what race is always the next question. So I've been wanting to go over all 8 races in the game, their racials, and how they affect each class. Today, everything's pretty balanced, and it's more based on aesthetics and personal preference, but in Classic, the racials were much more impactful in general, I'd say, and they could have big implications for your gameplay in both PvP and PvE. At the end of the day, you should pick what you want. Some people like to go for looks or role-playing, and some people like to optimize things. This video is mainly for the latter. I think it'll still be useful to the more casual audience though, and shed some light on some of the more powerful combinations, especially if you missed vanilla and you're coming from the current crowd. So I'm not necessarily telling you what to pick. The main goal here is to arm you with the information for you to make that decision yourself. The way I'll split this up is class by class and give you my top picks for both PvE and PvP. Since I want to be pretty thorough here, I'll just do Alliance for this video, and I'll save Horde for the next part. Each race does have specific starting stats, which do have a minor impact. Here's a table showing all of them, courtesy of the vanilla World of Warcraft wiki. I'll have a link to that in the description. In the grand scheme of things, these aren't as impactful as the racials in my opinion. Like trolls have a higher agility than undead, but is 4 points really worth not being able to negate fear effects like an Onyxia or Magmadar to have that DPS uptime? I'll take these stats into consideration still. They just aren't that important to me because I put a high value in utility. So first, let's just take a broad look at all of the racials one by one to get a better understanding. You're going to see humans at the top of a lot of these lists, simply because they have really good racials for pretty much every class. We have diplomacy, which is insanely good, especially for vanilla. 10% increased reputation gain. You want to be a scepter bearer? Go human. You want your eternal quintessence sooner? Go human. Classic World of Warcraft has a good amount of reputation grinds to do. The Argent Dawn, the Winter Saber Trainers, the PvP factions, although they're not out at release, and more. They're all very time consuming, and 10% can save you days and even weeks of farming. It makes this a very powerful racial, even through just raw numbers. Now, like I said, the PvP gear won't be out at launch, so this might vary depending on when you're watching this video, but these factions can give you some pretty good gear, and the faster you get it, the bigger impact it'll have on your damage, healing, or tanking. The only downside I can say really is that assuming that Classic never gets updated, it'll eventually be a dead racial once you're exalted with everything. We also have the Human Spirit, which is a 5% increase in spirit. Pretty self-explanatory here. It makes them regenerate health and mana more quickly. Mainly useful for priests on the Alliance side though, not really for everyone else, as I'll explain in a bit. Gnomes are generally the better casters, if you like to optimize things. We also have Perception, which is increased stealth detection for 20 seconds. Obviously, a PvP-oriented ability here. Very useful across the board, but some classes get a little more benefit from it than others, as I'll explain later. And lastly, we have one of the best in the game for PvE, and that's their sword and mace specialization. Increased skill with swords and maces, both one-handed and two-handed, by 5. Vanilla World of Warcraft had something called weapon skill, and another stat called defense. There are also attacks called glancing blows, which are basically normal attacks that do less damage. The higher your weapon skill in comparison to a target's defense, the more damage you'll do through these glancing blows. That alone is a very noticeable difference, but it also affects your chance to hit and crit. A 0.04% increase in all of these stats per weapon skill above the defense skill of your target. There's a ton of math and equations that go behind it, and it's something that's become very confused and convoluted due to private servers calculating things incorrectly and sort of muddying the waters. To sum it up though, weapon skill is very important to have for any melee DPS class. Like I said, it can even change your best in slot list. There's a set of level 44 mail gloves that non-human Fury Warriors consider to be best in slot for quite a while, simply due to the fact that they have increased weapon skill. That's how important it is. Anyways, next up we have the Dwarf. First, we have increased gun skill. Now, ranged weapon skill isn't as useful as melee weapon skill, simply due to the fact that there are no glancing blows for ranged weapons. You'll still get the added benefit of a higher chance to hit, but it's not anything huge. Some would even say negligible, and I'll go into further detail with that when we get to the Hunter. We also have Stone Form, which makes you immune to bleed, poison, and disease effects for 8 seconds, also increasing your armor by 10%. This is great to have in both PvE and PvP. In PvP, it clears things such as the Rogue's Crippling Poison, allowing you to kite, an Undead Priest's Devouring Plague, which is big, and in Classic, there are a bunch of really horrible diseases that lasted for a really long time. It was so bad that if I was on my Paladin in a major city back in the day, I'd get whispers all the time from diseased people asking me to cleanse them. So one of the best racials in my opinion. Note that there is a consumable in the game called the Jungle Remedy, which is sort of like a mini Stone Form. This cures just diseases and poisons, and it doesn't make you immune. Some people consider this as a half replacement to the racial, so you can sometimes sort of have the best of both worlds. For this video, I don't count consumables because really, there are a ton of other ones. Do invisibility potions count as a replacement to Shadow Meld? What about free action potions versus Escape Artist? It's too variable to consider all of this, so I think the best way to do it is to just assume it's an even playing field of just racials versus racials. If you want to consider consumables like this, I'll leave that up to you. Anyways, back on subject here. They also have plus 10 frost resistance, which is useful more for the final raid of vanilla, which is of course Nexramus, and also find treasure, which marks chests on your minimap. Kind of handy for gold making, but one thing that sucked about it is that you could only track one resource at a time, meaning that you'd have to choose between this or find herbs or mineral veins if you had herbalism or mining. And next up, we have the gnome. First we have Escape Artist, which is escape the effects of any immobilization or movement speed reduction effect. A 0.5 second cast and a 1 minute cooldown. This is pretty useful. I never really cared for the cast time. You can't use it on the move, and you're almost stunning yourself for half a second to clear a route or a slow. And PvP-wise, a lot of the slows that you'll be worried about will be things like Crippling Poison or Frostbolt, and that's stuff that's applied over and over anyways. It doesn't have the benefit of Stoneform, where it not only clears it, but it also makes you immune for a short period. A good trade-off, though, is the much shorter cooldown, so it's still pretty powerful. Next, we have Expansive Mind, which is a 5% intelligence increase. Intellect increases your mana and also your chance to crit, so this makes gnomes an appealing choice for casters in particular. They also get 15 more points in engineering, which is definitely handy considering it's probably the most expensive profession to level in vanilla. And lastly, they get 10 arcane resistance, which isn't too useful. For Classic, you really wanted either Fire, Nature, or Frost, since those are the most common spells in raiding. And Shadow for PvP. And this is kind of funny, but back in the day, when you hit water that was deep enough to swim in, it would knock you off of your mount. Since gnomes are the shortest race, they have the biggest trouble with this. There are rivers or spots that you can jump across no problem and stay on your mount with every other race, whereas the poor gnomes can struggle to keep up. Kind of silly, but I thought I'd mention it in case it mattered to some of you out there. And lastly for the Alliance, we have the Night Elves. Shadow Meld is a stationary stealth. It works just like the Druid or Rogue stealth, except it's a bit weaker with the fact that it fades when you move, and people can also see you from further away compared to the normal stealth. Also note that you can't use it in combat, unlike how it is now, but on the flip side, it only has a 10-second cooldown. More useful in PvP, as you'd imagine, getting the drop on people. PvP in vanilla isn't like today. Fights ended in a flash, so surprising and getting the opener on someone is hugely advantageous. It ensures that you get a charge off as a warrior, or maybe you're a hunter defending the flag room. You can also eat and drink while it's active, which is also very useful. We also have Quickness, which is 1% dodge. Pretty handy for tanks in particular, which puts them at or near the top for protection warriors for a lot of people, although I think humans are generally picked due to that weapon skill.
What brings you here?
You also have the Wisp form when dead, which increases your movement speed by 50%. Arguably more useful in vanilla, since you'll be dying more often, especially for that death run to Ironforge, if you plan on doing that. And lastly, they get 10 nature resistance, mainly handy for AQ40 here, for Huhuran, and a couple of other fights. So those are all of the racials. By now, you might have a basic idea of where these really shine for what classes, but let's go over them one by one, starting with the Rogue. Talking swords here, humans obviously for that weapon skill, but honestly, it's not as powerful as it could be for the Rogue. And that's because of their weapon expertise talent, which increases your skill with swords, fists, and daggers by 5 with 2 points. You do still get benefit, but there are some diminishing returns at higher weapon skill levels. I think it's somewhere around a 2% DPS change, partly due to the fact that your best offhand changes from the Hunger and Cold or Maladath, which increases your sword skill, to something like Iblis, which turns out better for humans due to the stats, versus that diminished benefit from weapon skill. For me, I still keep them on top because it is still an increase, and that reputation bonus is still big. And I know I mentioned it, but don't get too caught up and invest in slot lists, because remember, we're getting progressive raids. So I talk about the Blackwing Lair and Exramus, but it'll be a while before they're even available, so try not to worry about that stuff too much. Dwarves take second, mainly because I value Stoneform quite a bit. Being able to clear some of those AQ40 poisons or a bleed for a clean vanish is pretty handy. Night Elves do take third for me. As a rogue or a druid, you do get a stealth boost from Shadow Meld, and it's pretty major. It makes pickpocketing or just stealthing through dungeons much easier, plus the dodge is always a nice bonus for solo play. And gnomes come in fourth for me. Talking escape artist here, with proper talents, you can already clear roots and snares with sprint and vanish anyways. I'm of the opinion of making your weak points stronger, not buffing yourself in areas that you already excel in. For PvP, I like Dwarf first because of their stone form pretty much. Like I mentioned, you can use this to get a clean vanish off, which is really useful against rogue vs rogue, or any class with poisons or bleeds for that matter. It even clears blind, since that's a poison as well, which is another huge advantage. Like I said, Stoneform is an amazing racial in Classic. It was only nerfed years later in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion because Death Knights were complaining that they couldn't kill dwarves. All their damage was dependent on having diseases on their target, so that's when they finally saw the nerf bat. But it's back to its overpowered self in Classic, which is a good thing for Alliance players. Humans are also nice because Perception as a rogue has a higher value for me. You know the old saying in vanilla, what classes can beat a rogue? Well, a better rogue of course, and anyone who's played one will know that rogue vs rogue is all about who gets the opener. For players of equal skill and gear, the opener always wins if you play things right, so Perception, which is usable in stealth, is hard for me to beat in PvP. Also, of course, handy for druids trying to sneak a flag pickup in the Warsong Gulch. Plus, when those PvP factions come out, the faster you get that gear, the better, so I do also consider diplomacy here. Gnomes do take third for me. Like I mentioned, I don't like escape artists for rogue because we already have great mobility, but in the PvP scene, you gotta bump it up a bit. As strong as rogues are, they're really cooldown dependent, so if this can save you from burning a vanish or a sprint, that's still really handy. And Night Elves are trailing behind here at number 4 for me. Shadow Meld, as I recall, is about equal in power to Perception. I personally like Perception for rogue vs rogue since it increases your detection rather than increasing your stealth, so you're not just wandering around mashing cheap shot as much. But on the flip side, Shadow Meld does have the advantage of being useful against everything else, such as Warlocks and their invisibility detection. They're good, I just like the other racials more for PvP. And as for daggers, humans do get bumped down a bit since they no longer get that benefit from weapon skill. I imagine if you want to optimize things PvE-wise, you're going to be combat swords, but I just thought I'd mention it to be thorough. Next up, we have the Warrior. Here are my lists, whether you're two-handed or dual-wielding. Like I said, you'll see human at the number 1 spot for a lot of classes since that weapon skill is so good. Even more so for warriors since they don't have any talents that increase it. And the rest is basically the same reasons for rogue and PvE. I have dwarves at number 2 because Stoneform is so good, and I do have gnomes above Night Elves because I think Escape Artist is a little more valuable as a warrior since they don't have as many mobility tools as a rogue. It could help for some fights. And on the PvP side of things, once again, I like dwarves the most for that stone form so you can kite rogues and get a free intercept basically since you can go immune to crippling poison. Keep devouring plague off you since shadow priests are probably one of the best 1 vs 1 classes in the entire game, and so on. Gnomes take second for me. Being able to clear a Frost Nova or a Wind Clip route is nice as a warrior, so really, either of those are great choices I think. Third place is a tough choice for me, but I go with human personally. I like popping rogues out of stealth I guess, so I like Perception over Shadow Meld here. But I think what puts it over the edge for me is that reputation bonus. There's some good play from both the Arathi Basin and the Warsong Gulch reputations, which is sort of an indirect buff since you'll get it sooner as a human. For tanking, you have a few choices here. I think human is sort of agreed to be number one due to that increased weapon skill for more rage and threat generation, and considering that Thunder Fury is like the holy grail of tanking weapons, it lines up perfectly. I didn't tank back in the day, but I think warriors started to have rage generation problems as they got geared up since they weren't taking as much damage. So because of this and their other bonuses, I have them as number one for the Alliance. Night Elves take second place for me due to their 1% dodge, and also nature resistance, which is notable for AQ40. Dwarf is third for me. You do get 10% armor from stone form, plus the debuff clears and some frost resistance. It's more situational though, whereas humans and night elves get their bonuses in pretty much every situation. And gnomes come in last. The only positive thing you can say really is escape artist, but I mean if you're tanking, you're probably going to have a paladin in your raid, so any movement speed or rude is not an issue anyway since they have Blessing of Freedom, or just dispels in general. And the last thing you want to do while tanking is to cast something, which makes you unable to dodge or parry. So they take a distant fourth for me. Next, we have the Paladin, usually relegated to healing in the PvE scene, but I thought I'd cover DPS as well because why not? Human is a clear winner here for that weapon skill, especially for Retribution Paladins since they're so dependent on auto attacks anyways. You really can't beat that, in my opinion. I say the same thing for PvP as well, and that's because the Dwarf Stone form isn't as vital as a Paladin, I think. You can already cleanse poisons and diseases, and you have Blessing of Freedom for any movement and parrying abilities. Again, I like covering weak points instead of adding to strengths, so having that perception against rogues and druids and night elves and duels is a nice bonus. For healing, your first thought is probably human for that bonus spirit, but it's not as big of a bonus as you'd think, since I think paladins got most of their mana from crits via talents. The reason why I said this is more catered to priests earlier is because not counting mana per 5, you're locked out of regenerating mana as a caster unless you don't cast something for 5 seconds. It's called the 5-second rule, and priests get around this via the meditation talent, and they also have another one that gives them some spell damage and healing through spirit, so because of this, spirit in general is much more valuable to them. Paladins, on the other hand, don't really have any bonuses like that. The weapon skill as Holy is also pretty limited if you're going to be healing, so either human or dwarf I say, they're pretty even. Really, for healing, you should just go for the utility ratios rather than the numbers. If you want more reputation and perception, go human, and if you want stone form, go dwarf. You can also tank as a paladin, depending on your standard for the word. Like I said, warriors were the tanks in vanilla. I think the most the paladins tanked really were 5-mans, and maybe a few odd fights here and there. Like maybe the Twin Emperors due to their spell effects. Don't quote me on that one though. I'd say human once again for the weapon skill, but I'm afraid I'm not much help here. Sorry. Anyways, next up we have the mage. 2 choices here, gnome or human. The impactful ratios for the gnome are 5% intellect, which boosts your mana and crit, and also escape artist, which is just an added bonus. Whereas humans, we have spirit, which is pretty negligible for caster DPS in comparison to that bonus intellect. For PvP, I think it's another one you can go either way with without too much regret. It's basically perception versus escape artist and some intellect. It really depends on how much you fear rogues, I guess. If you want a more all-around useful racial, escape artist is the way to go. Personally, I prefer perception over escape artist in this case. But then again, you also have that bonus intellect. Like I said, for PvP, it's a tough choice. I guess I'd pick gnome if you forced me to choose though. Next, we have the hunter. For both PvE and PvP, my choice is dwarf, again for that stone form. Having that gives you an ace up your sleeve against rogues, which is doubly important for hunters because remember, They have that dead zone. If something gets too close to you, you can't shoot it. So anything to keep people at range is extremely valuable for PvP. Plus, as a hunter, one of your jobs will be to take down shadow priests with your mana drain, so having Stoneform against undead with their devouring plague will work wonders for you, and it's still useful in PvE as I discussed. Night Elves can do some pretty nifty things in PvP with Feign Death and Shadow Meld, and if you get a stealth pet, you can really catch people off guard if you're guarding a flag in the Arathi Basin or Warsong Gulch. To me though, I just think that Stoneform is too strong to pass up if you want to optimize things. As for the dwarves plus gun skill, like I mentioned earlier, ranged attacks don't glance, so they don't get as huge of a benefit as compared to melee weapon skill. They still get added bonus from the increased chance to hit and whatnot, but it's not really a huge deal. Plus, add to the fact that a majority of the hunter's best weapons are bows and crossbows anyways, just takes away from it even more. Most of you will be using Rockdalar for a while, since the quest starter is a 50-50 chance from the Major Domo fight, thus pretty easy to get, and after that, the main upgrades are crossbows or other bows, as far as I recall. And you wouldn't really think it, but even the sound of guns is a big turnoff for a lot of people. It's not like today, where it sounds like a stapler. It's a musket, and it can wear on some people, especially if you're raiding for a few hours. It doesn't really bug me, but I thought I'd just throw it out there for you. Night Elves do have their pluses as well. Like you saw on that table, they have a high base agility, which is of course the main stat for hunters, and like I said, Shadow Meld is great for PvP and getting the drop on people. Really, I think this is another one that you could go either way with without too much regret. I just like dwarves because I like Stoneform so much. Plus, they can bench more. Winding down here though, just a few more to go. Next up, we have the Warlock. Choices are Gnome and Human, just like the Mage, and it's a lot of the same reasoning. Gnome is the go-to for PvE for that 5% intellect. It dwarfs that spirit in comparison, especially considering that Warlocks generate mana through life tapping anyways. Which, if you have more mana, you'll even save some global cooldowns. And on the PvP side of things, you can already detect stealth as a Warlock, which lessens the value of perception in my opinion. As for Escape Artist, this gets a little more value compared to my logic with mages. Getting a fear off and clearing any hindering effects will definitely be handy. And lastly, we have the Priest. I saved this one for last because it's a bit of a special case. One of the cool RPG elements back in the day was that priests got special abilities that depended on their race, and in general, these eclipsed the normal racials for Alliance in my opinion. You have 3 choices here: Human, Dwarf, and Night Elf. Let's just go over the special abilities first. Humans get Desperate Prayer, which is an instant self-heal at a 10-minute cooldown, and with no mana cost. You also get Feedback, which is a defensive mana drain with some damage. Lasts for 15 seconds at a 3-minute cooldown. Dwarves have the same Desperate Prayer and also Fear Ward, which makes your target immune to the next fear, with a 30-second cooldown and 10-minute duration. And Night Elves get Elun's Grace, which reduces your ranged damage taken, and gives you 10% dodge for 15 seconds with a 5-minute cooldown. And Star Shards, which is a channeled arcane damage spell. The highlight out of all of these is this spell right here. You may have even heard of how good this was, even if you never played Classic. It was so good, in fact, that in patch 2.3, Blizzard made it available to all races. It was way too imbalanced. Fear Ward by far is the best priest racial for the Alliance, so much so that it even used to guarantee you raid spots. It didn't matter how poorly geared or unskilled you were. If you were capable of pressing this button, come on in. This was so useful to have for both PvE and PvP. The Onyxia Fear becomes a non-issue for your tank, the Magmadar Fear, and plenty of others I'm sure I'm not thinking of. And combining that with Stoneform just makes them way too powerful in my eyes. For those wanting the absolute best mana regeneration, Human is a good choice for that 5% spirit. I talked about this during the Paladin section, but I'll say it again just in case you've been skipping through the video. Not counting mana per 5, you're locked out of regenerating mana as a caster, unless you don't cast something for 5 seconds. Priests have a talent called Meditation that gets around this, which allows for a little bit of mana regeneration even through casting, and another one that gives you spell damage and healing based on spirit. So with the 5% bonus, you do see some added benefit from Humans. Some people think that trumps Fear Ward, but personally, I'm Dwarf all the way. As for the other racials, the runner-up here is Desperate Prayer in terms of usefulness. No mana cost, which is notable, so just an all-around oh crap button to have, which is really handy. And the other ones are just little buffs that are pretty negligible in comparison. Star Shards isn't that useful because it's arcane damage. If you're a Shadow Priest, you want that shadow damage obviously. And Feedback and Elune's Grace are just kind of little buffs to throw on. Too short of durations and too long of cooldowns to really be that useful in my opinion. PvP healing, I have the same idea here. Utility over everything, although do note that Fear Ward is a magic effect and it can be dispelled, so it's not all powerful. I also have the same with PvP DPS and PvE DPS. Guilds sometimes take one Shadow Priest for their Shadow Weaving debuff. I'm a believer that this time around things will be easier since these raids have been out for 14 years, and therefore guilds will be more lax and they'll take some of the lesser use specs more often. So with that and Fear Ward, you'll be quite the valuable member in a raid, even if you don't do the most damage. And lastly, we have the toughest choice, and that's the Druid. I know a lot of you struggle with this one, so here's my list for each category. I'll leave you to guess why I made these decisions. But anyways, that's about it for the Alliance. Again, at the end of the day, you should pick what you want. If you really like Arthas and you want to be just like him, make that Human Paladin. Or maybe you were like me and you thought that Dwarf Hunter in the cinematic was really cool, so you'll pick him. Just think carefully, because there aren't any race changes this time around. This will be the character you'll be spending 60 levels with. Again, this video isn't saying you must pick these races. The main goal was to shed some light on things that maybe you didn't know about. I know a lot of you are probably coming from the current game and you skipped Classic, so maybe you didn't know about stuff like weapon skill or the priest racials, so hopefully you gained some insight by watching this. Hopefully I hit all of the highlights. It has been over 11 years for me. If I have any corrections, I'll have a pinned comment for you to check out. If you have any suggestions yourself, post them in the comments, and read through them as well, as I'm sure there'll be some helpful information in there. I should be back soon with the Horde video. I'll post it in the description whenever I get around to that, if you favor that faction. I hope you found the video helpful, like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.
Hey guys, what's up? Mad Season here, back with another video for you. I'm continuing my race picking guide here, and as promised, in this video we'll cover the Horde. If you're Alliance, I do have a dedicated guide for that. I'll have it in the description. Sorry if I sound a little more dead than usual, by the way. I just got up, and this is the only time I have to record this today, so you'll have about 20 minutes of Super Saiyan Monotone 3. We'll follow the same format in this one, and there will be some repeat stuff, just to warn you. I'm assuming that people won't be watching both videos, so I'll trade a bit of redundancy just for the sake of being thorough. I will say that this video was much tougher than the Alliance one. the stun resist, the fear, charm, and sleep breaker, AoE stun, attack speed. All 4 of these races are much closer to each other compared to the Alliance's 4, in my opinion. Trolls are probably the weakest of the 4, and I know they're the butt of everyone's jokes with their health regeneration, but they do have their roles, as you'll see. Each of these races have their own starting stats, as you can see. Like I said in the previous video, I do take these into consideration, but compared to the racials, these are really pretty minor, especially for the Horde, since they're so good all around. So, just like the last one, let's first just go over each race and their racials one by one, and then go over the lists for each class. Starting with the Orc. First up, we have Blood Fury. Increase base melee attack power by 25% for 15 seconds, but also reduce healing effects on you by 50% for 25 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. So just a nice DPS boost here. Note that it does say melee attack power. Back then, attack power was split up between melee and ranged, so this isn't impactful for the hunters really. Just thought I'd throw that out there since a lot of people misread that. Obviously, the healing reduction also makes it a dangerous ability. As a tank, you're going to want to drag this off of your bars, and use it very carefully in PvP situations where you know that you're not going to need heals. And lastly, note that it says base melee attack power, meaning that this isn't something affected by gear or buffs. And next, we have Hardiness. Chance to resist stun effects is increased by an additional 25%. For PvP, this is probably one of the best racials in the entire game, and you'll hear me top this throughout the video. Like I mentioned in the Alliance video, fights in vanilla ended in a flash. You really could die within a 5-second stun, which is why rogues were so popular, so having 25% resist, I can guarantee you it'll win you some fights. Warrior charge stuns, hammers of justice, the rogue's cheap shot and kidney shot. As a rogue, if I saw a group battle going on, I always avoided orcs because I knew that I would be less effective against them. Why attack a target that has a chance to resist my stuns? Especially orc warriors, they still give me nightmares. So it's very nice in the PvP scene. Not as huge of a presence in the PvE scene, but hey, it's there. And next we have Command. Damage done by Hunter and Warlock pets increased by 5%. Pretty self-explanatory here, just a nice DPS buff to have. And lastly, we have Axe Specialization, which is increased skill with one-handed and two-handed axes by 5. Now, I did go over this in the Alliance video, but I'll go over it again here for those who didn't see that. So feel free to skip past this portion if this sounds familiar, because it's the same thing pretty much. Vanilla World of Warcraft had something called Weapon Skill, and another stat called Defense. There are also attacks called Glancing Blows, which are basically normal attacks that do less damage. The higher your weapon skill in comparison to a target's defense, the more damage you'll do through these Glancing Blows. That alone is a very noticeable difference, but it also affects your chance to hit and crit. A 0.04% increase in all of these stats for weapon skill above the defense skill of your target. This is the short of it. There's a lot more math to it and things like diminishing returns at higher skill levels. But to sum it up, weapon skill is very important to have for any melee DPS class. Like I said in the Alliance video, it can even change your best in slot list. There's a set of level 44 male gloves that are considered to be better than most other pairs in the game for quite a while, simply due to the fact that they have this increased weapon skill. That's how important it is. If you'd like to read more about weapon skill in general, in case I suck at explaining it, I'll have a link in the description to a full guide for that. So, Orc is the human of the Alliance. They're great all around, and you'll see them at the top of a lot of these lists coming up. But next, we have the Forsaken. For racials, we have Will of the Forsaken. Provide immunity to Charm, fear, and sleep, and it's usable while already afflicted. Lasts for 5 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown, so very similar to the dwarf stone form that you may remember, a CC breaker with some immunity. It's mainly focused for PvP, but it's still great for PvE, the Onyxia and Magmadar fears being the main ones off the top of my head. Fear isn't as big of an issue for the Horde because Shamans have a spell called Tremor Totem. It's sort of a party-wide Will of the Forsaken pretty much, but still, not having to rely on that is still valuable, and you're not going to have a Shaman in every party, I imagine. So, overall, a great racial for both PvE and PvP. Next, we have Cannibalize. Hey, just because they're undead, they have to be zombies? I'd be offended. This allows you to eat the corpse of any humanoid or undead enemy, including players, and it regenerates 35% total health over 10 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown, so just a nice little ability to have. It's mainly useful for leveling or grinding. It'll save you some money on buying food, which is more important for vanilla since money is so much harder to come by. Sort of a taunting maneuver in PvP as well that I always liked. Not only do you kill someone, but you also eat their corpse afterwards. That's pretty metal. Next is Underwater Breathing. Underwater breath lasts 300% longer than normal. Pretty self-explanatory here. There are some quests in the game that require some underwater spelunking. And lastly, we have a plus 10 increase in shadow resistance. Spell resistance is a thing in vanilla. For PvE, you mainly wanted Fire for the Molten Core, Nature for AQ40, and Frost for Nexramus. Shadow was more useful for PvP. In the grand scheme of things, 10 is a pretty negligible amount, but it's a nice bonus to have. Next, we have the Mighty Tauren. Their active ability is War Stomp, which stuns up to 5 enemies within 8 yards for 2 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. Remember when I said that Horde just had good racials all around? It's just so useful to have in both PvE and PvP, and it can really change the dynamic of some fights. As a rogue, you'd want to use evasion against warriors. They would be able to use their overpower ability on you, but with its cooldown, it was still preferable. Tauren warriors, however, if they were smart, would weave in a War Stomp for a guaranteed hit anyways, since you can't dodge while stunned, which was pretty effective in countering rogues. And just PvP in general, it's great. You just can't overstate the value of stuns, and the use for tanking is pretty obvious too, although not 100% ideal, since it does have a cast time, which makes you vulnerable for a brief moment, and is more useful for casual dungeons since raid bosses are of course immune to any crowd control. But speaking of tanking, we also have Endurance, which is increased total health by 5%. Note that, unlike the Orc racial Blood Fury, this is something that scales with your gear. The more stamina and health you have, the more you get from this 5%, so it's pretty useful, and it gets even better in time. We also have Cultivation, which is increased herbalism skill by 15. Not really too much to say about this. In vanilla, you used to actually be able to fail when picking up herbs or mining nodes, and the higher your skill level was in comparison to the required skill needed to grab the node, the higher success chance you had. So Taurens are the master flower pickers. With gear and enchants, you can get to level 325 as one. So it's really minor, but hey, there it is. And lastly, we have a plus 10 increase to nature resistance. Again, mainly useful for the AQ40 for a few fights in there. They also get a hidden racial though, and that's their increased melee range. Some people write this up to mythology and rumor, but there are PvP videos back then proving that they have a further reach than other races. The melee range for every other race in the game is 5 yards, but due to their size, Taurens get about a 2-yard increase, allowing them to reach players from further away. But what this also means is that players can reach you from further away as well, so it's not something that's 100% positive for them. In melee fights, it doesn't really give you an advantage, but against casters, for example, it does, since they don't care about meleeing people, of course. It came into use more in the Burning Crusade with pillar humping. Torn could actually reach through some pillars if a player was too close and get a lucky mace stun off and catch them on occasion. It's just something to consider, advantageous in some ways and disadvantageous in others. I don't want to put too much emphasis on this yet because I can see this as something that they mess up with the official classic since they're using the modern engine. I still wanted to mention it though, so you're aware that it might be in. So if you're watching this video when it's released, just do a quick Google search or test it yourself to see if it made it in or not. And someone mentioned this in my last video. I thought it was a good point, so I'll bring it up too. Contrary to what the ladies tell me, size does matter. In PvP, there are people who click to target, so being a giant cow running around, you may find yourself being singled out more often than not. It's just human nature. If there's a big group battle coming up, people are going to default to the biggest target. So, whereas gnomes have an advantage for keeping a low profile, Taurens have a disadvantage for being quite beefy. There are consumables and gadgets that decrease your size, but like I mentioned in the Alliance video, I don't consider any of that. If you start taking potions and whatnot into consideration, there are just way too many variables to consider this to be useful as a guide. So for this set of videos, it's just racials versus racials. Anyways, lastly we have the troll. First up, we have Berserking, which increases your casting and attack speed by 10% to 30%, increasing the lower health you are, 10% at full health and 30% at critical. It lasts for 10 seconds and it has a 3-minute cooldown. So a nice attack speed boost here, and it actually puts them as a top race for tanking for a lot of people. Obviously, as a tank, you're going to be taking a lot of damage, so activating this for that 25% bonus really helps with your threat generation. Tanking in Classic was pretty tough because threat was much harder to manage. Think the skittish affix in Mythic Plus today is the norm, and honestly, it's probably even worse than that. So, anything that helps out with threat is going to be highly valuable, and this racial is great for that since as a tank, you'll be in those low health situations to get that bigger benefit. Even still though, the 10% is pretty good in general for anyone, PvE or PvP. Anything more than that though is pretty situational. In PvE, you obviously want to avoid damage, and you want to use it as much as possible. If you're waiting to use it until you take a lot of damage, it's kind of counterproductive. And in PvP, if you're saving it for that full boost, you're already dead anyways, since again, fights ended fast back then. Like I said though, it's still pretty good. We also have Beast Slaying, which is increased damage versus beasts by 5%. Just a nice raw damage boost here, mainly for leveling and grinding. There aren't a ton of beasts in raids. In fact, the only ones I can think of are Magmadar and the Core Hounds in the Molten Core, and a decent amount in Zul'Karab, so don't put too much value into this if your end goal is raiding here. And we also have Throwing and Bow Specialization. Since I hyped up Orcs so much, you might think this is just as good, but ranged weapon skill isn't as useful as melee weapon skill, and that's because ranged attacks can't glance. You do still get some hit though, and the bow skill is more useful than the dwarf's gun skill that I talked about in the Alliance video, since bows in general are much more viable in raiding. Rockdalar being the one that most of you will have, since it's such a high drop rate. It's a nice bonus, just don't take it as high value as melee weapon skill. As for the throwing weapon skill, I'm not even going to dignify that with an explanation. And you know I had to save the best for the last, and that's regeneration. Health regeneration rate is increased by 10%, and 10% may continue during combat. This and that throwing weapon skill are the most infamous racials in Classic. They're so bad that they overshadow the entire race actually, which is a shame. Someone did the math, and assuming the max level and the best of the best gear with the most spirit, you'd be regenerating like 5 HP per second in combat. But hey, I heard if you chop off one of their extremities, it can grow back a little bigger, so they do have that going for them. So, those are all the racials. Next, let's go over each class and each roll one by one, and I'll give you my top picks, starting with the Warrior. just to throw this out there, these are all just my opinions and what my personal choices are. What I think is not fact, and I would just end the video right here, but I'm sharing my lists anyways and my reasoning for them in hopes that it helps you gain some insight for yourself. So feel free to yell at me or disagree or whatever. As long as it's constructive, I encourage it actually. I do have Orcs as number 1 here for DPS. The impactful racials are that Axe skill and also Blood Fury. As a DPS warrior, that Axe skill alone is hard to pass up, and adding in an attack power buff on top of that is a nice combo. The stun resist is alright. I don't remember too many stunning effects in the raiding scene on DPS back then though. Next up, I do have Trolls, and a lot of you might be asking what's wrong with me. Well, Trolls are the only other race that have an actual DPS buff for the Horde. At full health, that's still 10%, and attack speed is something that scales nicely with warriors. Like I said earlier, I don't think you really want to hold on to this buff and wait to take damage, but there will be times where you get lucky and things line up nicely for you. Plus, as a warrior with Blood Rage, you can even cheat a little bit to get a little more out of it, so you have that extra synergy there. And while it is minor, the beast slaying